But why? What? Why? Why is this even being talked about, man? I mean, look, I'm not gonna go out there and say that the idea is not something that I would think about or contemplate, but why in the hell is this being talked about? And on Detroit radio, nonetheless. We're talking a lot about the Toronto Maple Leafs and guys on that team that could be in or out or around and about next season because Mitch Marner is going to leave. Who knows if Johnny T is going to leave? Morgan Riley? Who knows if he's going to stay? Brendan Shanahan? Probably going to be canned. And Auston Matthews, the subject of today's video. We already spoke yesterday about how his legacy as one of the top scorers in the NHL of this generation, sure, he will hold that label. He will be defined as the only guy to get 69 goals in the 2020s unless he does it again. But this guy, oh boy, has his legacy been tarnished by the way he plays in the playoffs and how the Leafs lose and lose and lose and lose and lose in the most embarrassing ways possible. The thing is, Auston Matthews is making a big beefy dollar amount. He's got 13 plus mil on the payroll till 2027, 2028. And this is a guy whose no-move clause, his trade protection, does allow him to control where it is that he plays. But because things have been so in Toronto, especially in this first season as the captain of the Maple Leafs, you could very well say that Auston Matthews is in a spot where his status as a Toronto Maple Leaf could very well be challenged. Now, let's go out there and see this piece published on RedWingsInsider.com. Because Jack Sutherland wrote it from 5 days ago, talking about an Auston Matthews trade to the Detroit Red Wings. Oi, 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 oi. The thing is, the source, RedWingsInsider.com, the folks who write on this page essentially do the same thing that I do. We take a look at stuff that's being said either on the radio, TV, social media, etc., and we just kind of converse about it. But the source for this thought stems back to host Mike Valenti on The Valenti Show with Rico, which is a program that is held every weekday from 2 to 6 p.m. on 97.1 The Ticket, which is gosh darn sports talk radio in Detroit. They literally spoke about this on gosh darn Detroit radio, and we can go out there and talk about it because of it. Let's dive into this article here. A top Detroit radio station is suggesting an earth-shattering move that involves trading Red Wings captain Larkin to the divisional foe Toronto Maple Leafs in a trade for none other than Matthews. Matthews, who has struggled in his team's second-round series against Florida, has yet to score in any of the first 5 games of the series at the time of the article's publication. If the Leafs were pushed out of the playoffs by the Panthers, would they entertain a franchise-altering move like this? Yeah, spoiler alert, they were kicked out by the Panthers, and embarrassingly too. Host Mike Valenti on The Valenti Show suggested the Red Wings contact the Maple Leafs and see if they'd be interested in trading Matthews in return for a package that would start with Dylan Larkin. He has not been good in this series. This guy walked in the league and scored 40 goals. He is a top 3 scorer. Many would argue he's the number 1 goal scorer in the sport. The reason I say it is this. The Leafs might not blow this thing up. What have we talked about on this show? This needs to be a bold offseason for the Red Wings. If I picked up the phone and called and you're Toronto and I say, here's the deal. Everything except Sandin Pellikka is on the table and I want Auston Matthews. My offer is Dylan Larkin. Would you do it? Now, okay, everything except Sandin Pellikka on the table? So Raymond, Seider, and everybody else is on the table too? Okay, of course, we're trying to reasonably look at this idea, although it's hard to be reasonable about an idea like this. You're probably not trading away Raymond and Larkin in the same move. You're probably not trading away Seider and Larkin in the same move. You're probably holding on to those three. Sandin Pellikka? I honestly don't even know if he's untouchable either. It could be Larkin, Sandin Pellikka, and a draft pick for Auston Matthews. I don't know. This works hand in hand with the conversations we had about Larkin being frustrated and pissed off with the way the Red Wings handled themselves during the trade deadline period, not making any significant moves and not adding any extra assets, not giving the team a spark. And then we saw Steve Yzerman respond and say, yeah, no, I talked to him about that after and all that. We saw some conversations talking about how Larkin could be frustrated, and the argument was that, hey, he'd come back from the Four Nations where everybody was competitive, everybody was good, everybody was striving for greatness, literally the best hockey players in the world in that tournament, and then he returned to the Red Wings. And the Wings are, by comparison, not at that same stratosphere of intensity and skill and who knows about motivation and drive and those kinds of things, but the Red Wings are just kind of on the outside looking in at the playoff picture. And you could debate whether or not Larkin was frustrated by the major shift there. The USA squad awakened whatever sort of competitive spirit was laying dormant because he wasn't able to play in the playoffs in his entire Detroit Red Wings career after his rookie season. So if Auston Matthews is in a spot where he could potentially be moved, if Dylan Larkin's in a spot where he could potentially be frustrated, could you make a move like this? You know, we spoke about Marner yesterday, and how the idea of acquiring Mitch Marner in Detroit was not as crazy as it seemed because, oh yeah, everybody talks about how he sucks in the playoffs. Well, guess what? Brendan Shanahan didn't do too well in the playoffs before he got sent over to Detroit. Dominic Hasek, same thing. Steve Yzerman took 14 years to win a Stanley Cup. Sometimes all you need to do to cement your name and greatness after being a top-tier player in the league for so long is head over to the gosh darn Red Wings, and then maybe you'll win yourself some hardware. Now, Auston Matthews has already won hardware in terms of goal-scoring records and trophies and stuff like that, so he's kind of fine. But I do find it kind of interesting how we can sit here and talk about the idea of an Auston Matthews trade to Detroit on the gosh darn Detroit Sports Talk radio show that's going on every weekday. This is pure rage bait here, but it makes sense in a way. It is not illogical or unreasonable to discuss the idea of a Larkin trade considering the context of what happened this season and the comments that were made after the season. But for Auston Matthews, a guy who is now all of a sudden potential big fish number one because of the decline and because of the way everything blew apart in the postseason, we're now starting to sit here and talk about Detroit. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this entire Detroit Red Wings angle on whether or not Axel Sandin Pellikka and a Dylan Larkin or somebody other than Axel Sandin Pellikka, another prospect or whatever, could get traded for Matthews. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.